Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nature Journal Show. Today, we're talking with Brooke Morales, a designer, writer, nature journaler, and urban sketching, who will be teaching painting watercolor skies at Wild Wonder 2024. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Marley. It's good to be on again. Always a pleasure to
Yeah,
talk with you. Yeah, this is our
yeah,
third time talking and our second time on YouTube with the Nature Journal show. Yeah.
great. Okay, well, let's jump into your class. Do you have any of your sky paintings that you
I
could
do.
show to give us an idea of like what the class is going to be like?
Yeah, so let me show you what you're going to be seeing first.
Okay.
And so what I do is I paint the sky every day. This is my second year of painting the sky every day.
Whoa.
I begin from a 3x3 piece of paper. And then
Mhm.
each day I do this, I mask it off and I do the sky and then I unmask it. And piece by piece, just like day by day, I wind up assembling these
Whoa.
pages that I put in a book that you can flip through um,
Wow.
of my skies. So this has become, and this is all weather data. So I log
Mhm.
the time, the date, the temperature, the weather data,
Wow.
any kind of metrics that I can look up regarding the weather that fits on here. And then, something I wasn't putting down, but what I would recommend for people
Mhm.
who are interested in this is if you want to add humidity to this, it's kind of
Mm.
cool to see how is humidity impacting the skies as well in terms of how saturated they look, um, especially when you
Cool.
compare it with the time of day. Yeah.
Cool. So, why do you think this class is important? What is the importance of this class, do you think?
I think the importance really, and this is something I didn't set out to do for this reason, but it started to occur to me more and more. Is, we hear that saying of like time flies, but when
Mm.
you're painting the sky and you make time to do that each day, and it doesn't take a long time to do. You really do, especially when you're flipping back and you're seeing all of those days. It's like,
Mhm.
whoa, there's this snapshot of the day, and you realize, wow, time is precious and it
Mm.
goes fast. And I think the other thing is while you're painting the sky, time is passing. You're not looking at a static image. You're looking at the moving sky, just like time is moving. You're watching the sky move, the clouds, and even if there are no clouds in the sky, the light, the gradation, the depth of the color, that's all changing. Just like
Mm.
every little cell in your body is constantly changing. You're constantly changing. The sky's constantly changing. And what's really cool about this, the benefit is it's hard sometimes, I think, when you're trying to have like a daily nature journaling practice, which you don't have to, but it's cool to try that if you haven't tried it. But sometimes it can be difficult to find a subject every day,
Mm.
but you still want to practice and you still want to engage and you want to have that kind of meditative moment. The sky is always there, no matter where you are. There's a sky,
Mhm.
and you can count on it that if you've got a window to look out or you can step outside, you can paint the sky. So it's not a subject that you're going to have any difficulty finding. If you try
Mm.
to do a specific kind of thing each day, it can be challenging. But if you do something that is so general,
Yeah.
it makes it a lot more accessible.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge part of it is the accessibility. So, could you talk a little bit about your 365 Sky project and how you got started with that?
Yeah. So this goes back to when I first started watercoloring, I began watching a channel by a gentleman named Paul Clark. And
Hmm.
Paul Clark is a watercolorist. And as a mention, kind of an aside in one of his videos, he had said, try painting this. I think he's in England. And he had said, try painting the sky every day. And he showed a quick snapshot of like his skies, and they were all like gray, foggy,
Uh-huh.
dreary days. And I thought that's actually like a good idea. And then I had heard talk about skyscapitos. And I thought,
Mhm.
okay, that's cool. So it was October of 2022. So not I did this throughout 2023, but October 2022, I had decided I'm going to paint a skyscapito. I don't know what to do. I've never painted skies. And so I thought, well, I'll just mask off some paper. And I, I did this. And
Mhm.
it was like and I didn't know at the time. I thought, should I try to draw the bird if I see the bird, like flying past? And I don't do that now because things move so quickly. But I liked it a lot. And then I realized, let me take these out of the protective sheets because it makes it really
Okay.
like it reflects the light. And I thought, well, it'd be cool instead of just doing that one, kind of set where I didn't have any rhyme or reason. I'm so sorry it's taking so long to get these out of the sheets.
No worries.
Very patient. So yeah, this one, is like, oh, okay, this is fun, but I had no context.
Right.
And
So
I
you did
realized
3.
it,
Could you just describe it in words for? I'm trying to do somewhere in case people are just hearing the audio or
of
not seeing
course,
everything. Or
this is a
um,
rudimentary, this is
mhm,
like my first time trying to paint skies, and I didn't have a practice in mind in terms of like,
mm,
I didn't know I was going to make this into something. I just wanted
mhm,
to try to paint skies, and I didn't record any weather data, and I didn't
mm.
record any context. And when you look at this now, you're like, okay, those look like skies, but they don't really have meaning.
Right.
And
That's
so
a good
after I
point.
had painted 6 of them, I thought, I like this, but I want there to be context. And
Mm,
so I then painted a panel of skies and I started
mhm,
logging the weather data for that. So I began like noticing like, well, what time was it and what was the temperature? But I
mhm,
didn't really have a structure yet for all of the weather data I wanted to record. And I began to think, it would be great if I started having consistent weather data and I began doing this at the same time each day.
mm.
Because when you look at like all these blues, for example, if this was painted at 6 p.m. and this was painted, at 8 a.m., you can't really compare them as well to
Right.
know apples to apples. It's kind of like, well, it's a different time of day though. So then I began painting the sky at the same time each day throughout 2023, and that was 7:30 a.m. And I was always
Mhm,
facing south. And when I did that for that span, it allowed me to look at every single snapshot and really see, like if you were going out and taking a picture every morning
wow.
at the same time, how the light changes when the moon is present if it's not being blocked by clouds. And the
Mhm,
different kinds of like patterns of what we see in the sky over time. And so being able to anchor it to that time of day was really meaningful to me to have an idea of like how broad or just greatly the sky, greatly even a word, that it changes over time. Um,
yeah.
and I really liked the effect of that. However, I didn't like the stress of having to
Mm,
paint the sky at 7:30 a.m. facing south because I'd
mhm.
have to get into sketchy situations, no pun intended sometimes,
Uh,
to get that view at that time.
yeah.
Yes, like if you have a business meeting and you're on the road and you need the cool
Yeah.
weather, you're like, you
Oh,
can't pull over on the
wow.
freeway and paint the sky, right? Like, so,
Wow.
um, once I was staying in a hotel and I had to go and try to find a south facing window. And the only south facing window I could find that I had access to was, those stairwell doors that are like heavy metal and they've got like a protective glass narrow window
Yeah.
with like crosshatch metal so people
Yeah.
can't break in. And I had to like look through that and try to
Wow.
paint the sky. So I thought, I'm doing it this year. I'm going to do 2024 skies again for the year, but I'm not going to have a rule of facing south and I'm not going to have a rule for time of day. So I paint the
Mhm.
sky every day, but I get to paint it whenever I want, so long as, it's not nighttime and I can see the sky.
Wow. So one of my questions was to ask if painting the sky is just an artistic practice, but it sounds like it's also more than that.
Yeah, if it were just an artistic practice, I don't think I would have stuck with it this long.
Mm,
But it has become um, what's the word? I mean, I don't want to overuse the word practice, but it's
mhm,
practice. I'm practicing watercolor every single day because I'm painting
mhm.
the sky every single day. I, I'm learning colors better,
Mhm.
especially blue. Like
Yeah,
I know
I
my blue,
bet.
I know my local region blue. It's like an ongoing, so it's a nature journaling practice, it's an art practice. It helps me like now when I see the sky and I see the blues, they mean a lot different to I see them differently now. It's like
Mm,
my brain has been really programmed with blues and skies now and the variations. And as a designer for a really
mm,
long time, I was already very aware of like color and variations of color in general through like the digital
mhm.
format. But that was living in pixels. learning
Yeah.
how to mix color and learning how to represent the color that I'm actually seeing in the sky, but on paper. This has been a fantastic practice for being able to do that on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. So why don't, if it's so accessible and it seems like such a powerful practice, why don't more people think of the sky when they think of nature? Or when it comes to nature journaling subjects, it's like plants and animals, but people don't always think of the sky as part of nature.
That's a great question. I really like that because I think what happens is it's something that we become so familiar with because I was
Mm,
saying it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's every day.
hmm.
You maybe don't think about it because it's just you're so accustomed to it. And so sometimes I think when we're starting a nature journaling practice, we're beginning like to look around. We look for something that's novel, and
Mm,
that's usually the thing that sticks out. And we're like, "Whoa, look at that bird!" And
hmm.
we give our attention to the bird because maybe it's like we know that the sky's still going to be there, so we
Mm.
maybe take it
We
for
take
granted.
it for granted. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that's
makes
my
total
guess.
sense.
I didn't think about it right away either. I
Right.
mean, I had been nature journaling for I think 2 years
Hmm.
before I did that first sheet, where I'm
Hmm.
like, I should do that. So, and then when I started getting into it, it was like, gosh, why didn't, I wish I had started it sooner, but, you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about how this class will be for different skill levels. So, people who come to your watercolor skies class, some of them will be complete beginners. Some people might have more experience. How will it be different for people that are different at different levels?
First of all, I want folks to really begin with the mindset of it and
Hmm.
understanding that this is something that doesn't have to be art, and it's not art. I mean, it is art, but it's not art. It's not about the art. So I think right there that helps with accessibility in terms of thinking, it's not like you have to have this perfectly dialed in. You're not going to if you're a beginner. If you are a beginner and you're wanting to look into this is going to introduce this concept to you and a way to think about it and give you some, I would say, very straightforward approaches for how to start right away, like that day. And hopefully help someone not feel if there is like a feeling of intimidation around starting or just maybe the that kind of fog of where do I begin. I really want to lift that fog and give
Hmm.
you some actionable steps to move forward. If you are a pro, then I'm not going to be able to teach you anything about color theory and mixing or anything like that. But perhaps I can inspire you to take this practice on as
Hmm.
just a good way to gauge those things over time and continue your watercolor practice. So, I think
Cool.
that's everything in between lies somewhere within those two margins.
Yeah. Well, I just want to share this comment in the live chat from Karina, who was thinking about you recently.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Karina's
you
on
know,
on vacation and trying to capture the skies, and keeps thinking, "Geez, I should practice skies as much as Brooke does."
think of it more like not as much as me, but just whatever's right for you and when you feel like doing it. Yeah, because
So
you probably practice something else in life more than I do. So just try.
yeah, okay. So maybe that brings us to the next question, which is, when students leave your class, what will they leave with, and how will they be different?
I want them to be excited about incorporating this by being able to look at this as something that is very specific to them. So this isn't going to be about painting the sky like I do it or painting the
Mm,
sky for the same reason I do. But I do want someone to feel like Karina to think, I should do this, but I want them to know why they feel like they should. So, not because I do it daily, but because whatever reason compels them to feel like this is something I just want to do it. Because I think that this is going to help somebody build a habit. And I'm really, really big on habits. I love
mm,
habit formation, studying habits, why we do what we do. And so this is a good, like if you're looking to build a nature journaling habit, this is a really good method for doing that too. So just that alone might help you develop that. You might also walk away just feeling like, maybe I don't want to paint dedicated skies each day,
mhm,
but maybe I give the sky within my nature journal page a little bit more love. Or
Mm.
just think about it a little bit more. When you're setting out to paint a really cool bird, that's the layer in front of the sky.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about supplies a little bit. Are there materials that people are going to need specifically for your class?
Paintbrush. Yeah, because this is gonna be a watercolor sky. I want to
Mm-hmm.
caution folks. Um, our blues are different. So I wouldn't go out and buy a bunch of blues. I would, if you have blue, and you might not have a blue sky, by the way, the day that we're painting this. You
Mm,
might have a really cloudy day and it might be super gray. You might also have a sunset. There's different colors. I will show you certain colors that have worked well for me because they mix very well and they have reactions that work really well for sunsets so that
mm,
they don't like repel each other necessarily. I'll show you which blue I prefer for my region. Might be different for you too. And you'll need, I would say, I don't want you to have to focus a lot on, you have to have like a very specific paper, but paper for this type of practice, thicker paper does help a lot. I wish it wasn't such an important thing because I would like to just
mhm,
use my sketchbook more often for these. But I will say that if you have a heavier weight, 100% cotton paper, it is going to allow you to lift out clouds, which is one of the
mm,
techniques that we'll be looking at. And it gives you more time to work on the
mhm,
sky because it doesn't dry up as quickly. So if you're trying to blend colors and you're trying to, like, a sunset is really, I would say, the most challenging of the types of skies that I've painted.
mhm,
It allows you to have a little bit more opportunity to tweak those colors and
mm,
work them. But overall, even if you don't have those things, again, the foundation of this is really the mindset and the approach. It's a techniques workshop, though. But we
mhm,
are, it's more about how do you approach this? How do you do it? What are the techniques? Yes, thicker paper, better paper will help you,
mhm.
but you can do this in a sketchbook as well.
Okay, so are you gonna post your supplies on sked.com when that comes out, or send out an
Yes.
email or something? Okay.
Yes, and we'll discuss them during the workshop too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like for taking your class, we don't need to worry too much about what we have. Like if I have my own watercolor set up already, just bring what I have, basically.
Bring what you have, and then if you are worrying about like which type of brush, you
Mhm,
can do this with a water brush. It is a little bit more challenging, for water control. So
mhm,
if you have, and I'll just demonstrate, if you do have like a larger round brush, you
mhm,
know, these, it depends on how large of a format you're going to be painting.
mm,
If you're painting a sky that's this big, you're going to need a much larger brush. I'm
mm.
painting skies that are this big, so this brush works really, really well for me. You don't have to
Okay.
have this. The other tool that I would say definitely come with, because you don't know if you're going to have clouds, have some tissue. So
Mm.
just some Kleenex. If you have some tissue or a paper towel, but I'd recommend Kleenex. Uh,
Everyone's gonna have Kleenex because you know those John Muir Laws talks.
they're
They
gonna make you
definitely,
cry.
yeah,
Yeah, you're
exactly.
gonna tear up. Have your Kleenex. Keep your don't use your used Kleenex from the John Muir Laws poems. Or you can. Yeah, have a brush, the biggest one you have for the format that you have, that works well for that. Have some tissue and have if you have some thicker paper that can handle a bit more water, do that. And of course, if you have blues and a variety of colors, because you don't know what the sky's going to be like where you
Mhm.
are that day, have your watercolor box. If the blue isn't perfect, it's okay. We're going to just work on like, how do you look at those things? And then you tweak from there.
Okay. All right. So that's supplies for the class. But what about, let's continue the conversation about supplies since we're already there. Could
Sure.
you talk about a little bit more in depth about like for not for the class, but just for in general and for your practice, what are some of the things that you like to use?
Yeah.
Like what pigments have worked for you, stuff like that.
So personally, supplies that I like to use, I like to go very portable.
Mm-hmm.
I take my kit running.
Mm-hmm.
I take my kit almost wherever I go. I have lately been working I work out of a small book, but I've been starting to go a little bit bigger for my nature journal.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite things are multi-use tools. So, for example, I have it's a Coleto, and
Mm-hmm.
in this I have non-photo blue lead, I have
Oh.
graphite, I have a ballpoint pen, which I've swapped the pen to be. You can either do like like in steel some Bic pen, which is good for uh, like line variation.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've noticed that Papermate, they have a pretty good pen for sketching. And then an eraser that's even smaller than the, oh, what's it called? That thin
The
mono.
Mono Zero.
Yeah, so it's like an eraser.
Wow.
So this is my problem, is that when I get in the field and I get really engrossed in a topic, I don't, this sounds ridiculous. Like some people are really comfortable switching their tools and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Once I've got the tool in my hand, I don't like having to change tools. And a lot of time it's because I
Yeah.
have a vest on. It's really hard to maybe get to things. So
Mm-hmm.
I found that like I'm less likely to change tools once I have the tool in my hand. So I've been trying to
Right.
find tools that I can just, what's the most all-in-one. And I do the same thing with the multi-8. I've taken 8 color leads that I actually 7 color leads that I like, and then a 2B 2mm lead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's just like, okay, if I want brown, I've got brown. Do I want a non-photo blue to sketch some lines? Sure, that's right
Mm-hmm.
there. And so with these, I have this, and then I carry two
So
other
hold on,
things.
just to describe those verbally. So these are both, what are these called? Pencil, what are these kind of pencils called that have multi
I think
pencils?
they're
I
just
just
called
remember them as a kid.
like a multi. Maybe if you
Okay.
search for multi and you like pencil, this one
Yeah.
is by
And you
I
click
think
them and the different tips come out.
yeah, this one you can change it. You pop this off, and there's these inserts.
Wow, yeah, that's
And
amazing.
so you can like choose what's
Mm-hmm.
going to go in here. But the inserts with the ink are not waterproof,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a really cool gel pen. They're good writers. I wish they were
Mm-hmm.
waterproof. But I thought, well, I'll fill this with like non-photo blue and lead and
Mm-hmm.
ballpoint and an eraser, and kind of have all those in one.
That's
This is a
impressive.
multi-8 is what it's by Pentel. And the true multi-8 has a gray case, but
Mm.
I like the clear case because it's easier to see what the colors are. I don't have the best
And
eyes in
and
the
you
world.
talked about these. I'm gonna put your Instagram up here because I think you did a whole post about one of those on your Instagram, right?
Yeah, I did a post about this right
Mm-hmm.
here and using that out in the field with color
And every
pencils.
Tuesday on your Instagram, you talk about tools and supplies or something like that.
I wish it was every Tuesday. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
some Tuesdays. Yeah,
Okay.
so
All
I
right.
do on Instagram, I will, if I feel like I have something where you don't have to go out and buy things. Sometimes there's
Mm-hmm.
like this one is, you might not own this, but most of my tooltip Tuesdays is what I call them. I have to do with things that are already probably around your home or a
Mm.
supply that you already love. And because I don't want you to have to be like, oh, I have to go buy this new thing. It's like, no, here's how you like tape an envelope into the back or make a bleeder page, or here's how you can segment your watercolor box. Like, let me, you asked my other favorite tools. My favorite thing that goes with me, one of my favorite things, it goes with me everywhere, really is my art toolkit watercolor palette. And
Mm.
it's portable, and I have segmented the pans with gift cards that I cut up,
Whoa.
and I epoxy them in. So if you notice, they're kind of on my palette is
Yeah,
faulty.
I
So
see those sideways. There's
yeah,
a sideways division in the squares.
right. And that can be a little challenging to get used to at first because you have like less room to dip into. But it's really helpful for me where it's like, this is all the color I'm carrying with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to be able to have, I don't use all those colors every time I paint. What I do is I kind of pick, where do I want like a warmer feel, or do I want cooler? So, and then I painted this from a smaller palette than that, but using the same principle, just keeping with like a few of the colors from the box, and that's just like my normal, this is my running book. So
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. What are some of the pigments that have worked really well for some of the blue pigments for skies, or gray pigments? I know gray skies can be a big challenge also.
Yeah. So my blue does change where you are. So you might be like in an area where your blues are more like Prussian blue. My
Hmm.
personal, like when I look out the window and I try to color match, the most dominant blues for me are cobalt and cerulean. And
Hmm.
it's usually about a 50-50 mix
Hmm.
between cobalt mixed with cerulean. For grays, at first I was trying shadow violet. When I first started, I was using
Hmm.
shadow violet. Shadow violet is a beautiful color,
Hmm.
but it's tinted. And I wanted to be able to, your gray clouds, if you look up the next cloudy day you have, what's gorgeous is you'll see some cool grays and some warm grays sometimes it's like really close to each other in the sky.
Hmm.
There's a variation based off of like how the light is hitting it at any one time. So the only gray I have in my kit now is actually, it's a gray, it's neutral tint. So I
Hmm.
have neutral tint. And then what I do is I take the neutral tint, which is, if you don't know neutral tint, you'd think by the sound of it, it's like a buff color. It's not. In your palette, it looks like a black.
Yeah.
And so neutral tint, what I do is I get a pool of that, and then I take the color I needed to lean toward. So if it's warmer, I can tint it with like a magenta, or I can tint it with quinacridone burnt orange. Or if it's cooler, sometimes if I don't mind like a tiny bit of granulation, I can use like an indanthrone blue, or I
Hmm.
can use, you could use like ultramarine. I don't usually have ultramarine in my kit. I did for a little while. Or your cobalt. You just tint it based off of what you're seeing, and a little usually goes a long way. It's a
Mm.
very subtle thing with cloud colors, but that's why I don't have like a predominantly skewed gray, because
Hmm.
the grays
Yeah.
vary a lot, and you want to be able to
No,
create.
that makes a lot of sense. That's a really huge tip for anyone who's watching. For folks who are watching, it looks like there's almost 20 people watching right now. If you are benefiting or getting some value, give a thumbs up to the video, because I mean, I think that one, just that gray tip for clouds, that's a really good, helpful tip. What about paper? Different types of paper.
Yeah. So the paper that I have had, I would say the best experience with is Arsh Cold Press 300 pound. That has
Hmm.
been just, that's a workhorse of a paper. It's
Hmm.
not great nature journaling paper for me. It's expensive too.
Hmm.
But so it's rough. And so if you're trying to take notes
Yeah,
on it, it's not
for
going to be
sure.
real good, like note taking paper. But for painting, it's fantastic. I've also tried, I did try Fabriano for skies.
Hmm.
And that was, I would say, same level feeling. I prefer the Arch more. But
Hmm.
in anything else with painting, I don't use Arch paper or the
Hmm.
fancier, I call them fancier, for my
Yeah,
grade.
they're
Um,
fancy.
my sketchbooks, I do use 100% cotton.
Hmm.
Um, that does make a difference. Um, and I prefer the Hanamula 100% cotton sketchbooks. That's
Hmm.
the paper I've fallen in love with and I use consistently. So it's like my favorite paper for nature journaling, um, for urban sketching. Everything else goes in a Hanamula sketchbook, and just the skies go on the nice arch.
How do you spell Hanamula?
Oh, I think it's Hahnemule.
Hahne.
I think I just lost the spelling bee. Let me look.
Hahne.
Let me look. Let's see. I should have that up. Hahnemu with an umlaut, which are the two double dots.
Oh,
HLE. So it's Hanamula. They've got like a
okay.
little rooster
At first,
icon.
I thought it was a Hawaiian. I was going more for the Hawaiian spelling, but I guess it's more of a Germanic word.
Oh, I think it's more because of the U with the umlaut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What about non-watercolor sky tools? Like, do you have any suggestions or thoughts or experience with things that aren't watercolor for doing the sky, or even like gouache, for example?
Gouache would be fantastic for it. I have not used gouache for it, but I think the principles still apply. You just might not have to work. You could work in reverse order and put your whites on on top, although it's better to
Right.
revert whites. Color pencils are also a really good tool. And
Mm,
I've been wanting to, to stretch myself to do some color pencil. If you have watercolor pencil, that might be a good middle ground as well.
cool.
I have seen somebody knock out an epic sky with a pen by
Mm,
showing what the value is, like a value
mhm,
study with a pencil or a pen. If you wanted to do this with graphite, you're not going to be matching the color, of course. But if you wanted to look at the value and do a value study, especially if it was like a cloudy day and to show
mhm,
where, like for example, like just a little side geek thing. Sometimes you'll hear people telling you how to paint skies, and they'll say, make sure that you have shadows on the bottom of the clouds. They're right if it's in the afternoon, because
mm,
in the afternoon, the sun is above, the clouds are shining down, and the shadows down here. But if you're painting the sky in the morning and the sun's down here,
mhm,
then your cloud shadows are up here.
mm,
And so somebody could show you almost what time of day it is
mm.
by where the shadows are on their clouds just with a value study.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So that you could do a lot with a pencil too. And if you have like an eraser to erase out some of those highlights,
Mm,
that's another way.
nice. Okay, before we move on, well, the lightning round is still coming up, so don't
Okay.
forget about that. But before we move on from supplies, do you have any sort of principles or yeah, like overarching principles around art supplies that you want to share? I know this is something we talked about a lot in our other conversation, and since you're on here and you do so much. Experimentation and research with different supplies. Are there any other sort of principles or overarching tips on supplies you want to share with people?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier because I do a lot of experimentation, but at the same time, you can go into the weeds too far and it can throw you off of the initial intention. So remember your
Mm,
intentions and own your supplies, don't let them own you. And make sure that you try to have a little less in the field than what you think you need, if you can.
mm,
Or sometimes give yourself the permission to haul way too much stuff out into the field. If you can go into the field, if you can't, you have more options at home. But supplies are wonderful. You can do a lot with supplies. But if you have too many supplies, they become really like a crutch and can seriously weigh you down.
mm,
Sometimes it's easier to know you only have like a pencil with you or a pen with you or just like one kind of tool, and you're like, okay, I know what I'm working with today, because you
yeah.
get decision fatigue. Just like
Mm.
if you have too many outfits, you're like, what am I going to wear? You want to have options, but at the same time, you're like, I don't know. Should I wear the black shirt with the V or the black shirt
Mhm.
crew? And it's like, you only had the black shirt with the V neck, choose.
Yeah,
So, like,
that's
too many pens, too many
yeah.
grades of pens, and I've done this, and I do this. I still test things out, but I
Mm,
have to pack, and I've shown you my method for packing them up. I have to pack them away. Then make your
mhm,
choices. Practice them when you, like, for example, if you watch TV, you watch shows or anything like that. That's a great time to get familiar with your pens and pencils and stuff before you go out and you do the serious work in the field.
mhm,
Do some of the little scribbling and those kinds of pencil miles, and worry about the tools when it doesn't matter, so that when you are connecting with nature, you're not focusing on your tools. You're used to your
mhm.
tools. And now you're focusing on whatever that really cool phenomenon is while you're observing it.
Yep, exactly. All right, I'm just gonna give a shout out to people in the live chat. Denny Marie Morales is here.
Oh, she's
Um,
my mother-in-law. Hi.
yay. Um, and Suzanne and Karina are all here. And for the rest of you who are watching, if you haven't yet, post something in the live chat. Maybe share what some of your favorite supplies are, or if you've ever painted a sky, let us know. Oh, Cindy is here also. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your past experiences at Wild Wonder, because I think you've been before, you've even been involved in the scenes before. Do you have any stories or experiences from past Wild Wonder nature drilling conferences that you want to share?
Yeah, so I've been a moderator at the last two. And then I was a last minute panelist with you and Kate and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Robin about toolkits
Mm-hmm.
last year, and that was a lot of fun. I was my first Wild Wonder was the first year that the was when the foundation was announced. And I
Mm-hmm.
had been helping with like the behind the scenes moderation, but for the in-person event where it was announced, I got to be at the Foster Museum and I
Mm.
was taking photos and helping out in that capacity. And I remember when we had been in a drought and Jack was announcing the Wild Wonder Foundation. And as he's announcing it, this downpouring of rain started pouring on
Whoa.
the roof. And it's like it sounded like a tin roof. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just like pouring down rain while he's announcing. And he stopped for a second, if I recall correctly, and just kind of like, and it was really neat.
Whoa. I don't
As
remember
the
that because
electric current, it was really cool.
I was I was watching it remotely. I think I was doing a moderating thing, some type of moderating thing in the comments for the virtual part, but I didn't even I forgot about the rain part. That is really cool.
It started pouring. Yeah, it was
Wow.
cool.
Okay, so are there any classes or keynotes this year that you're going to be taking, or do you have like a plan for your strategy for the conference this year?
Yeah, so I won't be able to attend live for actually two of the days, but I'm going to catch those up when the online version becomes
Mm-hmm.
available.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the thing I'm looking forward to the most actually is the talk with Tony Foster.
Mm.
There's a lot of really fantastic stuff though on the
Mm-hmm.
schedule, but I just hearing Tony talk and share, he's just such an inspiration. I'm looking forward to. I have my schedule here.
Yay.
Roseanne Hanson's talk about the art of English
Mm.
math and
Yeah.
fractals and Fibonacci and more. So that just sounds really cool. I love Jean McKay's work.
Mm.
Robin Lee Carlson painting textures fast and slow. Anything that has like the we're going to do something quickly appeals
Mm.
to me because I keep trying to get faster and faster so I can capture more in limited bursts because things out there move so fast. And then Farina Hilgartner, I,
Mm.
I haven't attended a workshop of hers, but I have seen. I saw her interview with Jack,
Mm-hmm.
and it's tough because everything on here. These are all great teachers, and these are all really
Mm-hmm.
great things, but you have to pace yourself. I do plan to go back and also
Mm-hmm.
watch as many as I can. I will
Yeah,
need to
so
take breaks. I can't do the full wall of study.
yeah, tell us about your strategy or approach for the video pass because a lot of people want to know how to do that, or just kind of getting an idea from other people can be really helpful.
Sure. I think that, you have um we have a lot of great information here, but you don't want to blow through it
Mm-hmm.
because it can feel like you're doing something really productive by just like I'm going to watch all this stuff.
Yeah.
But really what matters is that you're absorbing it. And so if you want to take this and truly grow with it, watching something and then making sure that you're then pushing it out, that you are sharing it in some way in terms of
Mm.
like I'm doing it. So if you are going to take first the things that interest you most, try to revisit those things. And also, if you can share about that, like a summary to somebody else, it's that when we have to recall something that our learning deepens. It's
Mm-hmm.
that recall and teach back phase of when we
Mm-hmm.
learn. So if there's a way that you can do that even by writing about it, sharing about it with someone, like talking about it, go to pencil miles if you can. Share with
Mm-hmm.
other people there who are also really jazzed. I mean, how often do you get to hang out with like so many people that love the stuff, right?
Yeah.
You can talk and just geek out with somebody about like, oh yeah, did you hear about this? And I like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say enjoy it, pace yourself, take good notes, but take breaks. Your brain can only take so much, and it's a marathon. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
sprint. You can go back if you have the video pass. You can rewatch, or you can time them out to make sure that you can approach them when your brain isn't too full to really saturate or like accept
Yeah.
your information.
Yeah. That's a great tip. Okay, cool. Oh, here we go. P. Barantes shared some of their favorite supplies. Graph gear pencils, Stillman and Burns sketchbook, Copic multi-liner pens, and John Muir Law's watercolor palette. Good
Yeah,
choices.
those
Thanks
are
for
good.
sharing.
I love Copic PN. PN is the thing that you'll my handwriting. Most of my
Oh,
notes are Copic PN. They're a really
hmm.
good pen.
I haven't tried those yet.
The PN is
Cool.
a plastic nib, so it
Oh,
doesn't wear down
really?
as quickly as the felt tip, and there's more line variation in it, and it's
Hmm.
waterproof, like the other Copics.
Cool. Okay,
Oh, I'm
are you
sorry,
ready?
not Copic, that's Micron PN. Copic is also
Oh,
great. Yeah, sorry
are you
about
ready
that.
for the lightning round?
Yes.
Whoa, wow, that's awesome. Okay, zap, zap.
Zap, zap.
All right, let's go. And for those of you who are watching live, feel free to post your answers to your favorite lightning round questions. Okay, so the first ones are yes or no, or just one word answers. Is
Okay.
coffee an essential art supply?
Yes and no. So you got to drink it before you go out there because you're going to be too busy drawing. So
Okay,
make sure you get your coffee and
one
your caffeine.
one word answer for these first ones.
I've already, I've already ruined it. Challenge is over.
Okay, fast or slow?
Fast.
Birds or bugs?
Birds.
Organized or messy?
Organized.
Alone or with other people?
Alone.
Does your family understand your art?
Yes.
Snacks?
No.
Are you
Because
a
you're saying one word
perfectionist?
answers.
Are you a perfectionist?
Not anymore. No.
Ink or graphite?
Ink.
When it comes to art supplies, do you maximize or minimize?
Minimize.
Experiment or refine?
Oh, I want to say both on all
You
of
can
these. I
say
want to say,
both if
yeah.
you need to.
Can I? Both, because experimentation shows you which directions you want to refine. And it,
Oh,
it leads to failed experiments, which are wonderful. And then you just file those away and then you see like what's working. And then now you work from that.
yeah.
Yeah. But then you experiment from
Generalist,
there. Good.
generalist or specialist?
Uh, generalist.
Rule breaker or rule maker?
Both.
Big picture or micro?
Big picture.
Forest or desert?
Forest or desert? Forest. Yeah.
Okay. What face do you make when you're out nature journaling and you see something that you weren't expecting? Okay, cool. All right, these are the longer answer ones. If you could have a nature journaling superpower, what superpower would you want to have?
Teleportation, so I could go wherever I wanted to see
Oh,
whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted.
nice. Okay, if you could go anywhere in time with a time machine, when would you most want a nature journal?
I think like right before an extinction era.
Mm.
See how things were before like a devastating massive shift. And I should know the names
Ooh,
of the eras, and I don't know them very well. But I think that would just like
great.
that big demarcation of like how things changed dramatically.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and if you could only bring 5 supplies in the time machine with you and 1 snack, what would you bring?
All right. So the supplies. I would bring watercolors, a fountain pen, a pencil,
Uh-huh.
mechanical, a paintbrush. And does paper, is that like, do you count that as a supply?
Yeah, or a sketchbook is a good way to get a bunch of paper for one
A
item.
sketchbook. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. And then what snack would you bring in the time machine?
I'd actually bring peanut butter, even though I love chocolate. I'd bring
Yeah.
peanut butter. It has a lot
No,
of
that's a
staying
good
power. I get a lot out of it.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, in the nature journaling Olympics, which event would you compete in?
Ooh, like speedy kit setups. Like,
Oh.
so you set up like a monopod or, like really, really
Uh-huh.
fast, and you get to your supplies really quickly, and then you file them up. It's like the quick draw.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Sort of reminds me of the biathlon or something. Okay, and then last question for the lightning round is which animal species would be best at nature journaling?
The pica, of course.
Oh my gosh, did you see the interview with Rosemary earlier today?
No, did she talk about picas?
That's what she said too, yeah.
Oh, way! I already
Yeah.
loved her. Now I love her more.
Wow, you're soul
Yeah,
sisters.
yeah, she's there you go.
Aw. Okay, so explain your choice.
Okay, so they don't hibernate. They're active
Uh-huh.
all the time. They make hay
Oh.
while the sun shines. They're going
Uh-huh.
everywhere. They're super, like, they're always picking at little flowers, and they're going over all the rocks, and they're in these really
Mhm.
cool places. They have just so much energy. They could knock out so many pages and make it. So
Nice.
yeah.
All right. You survived the lightning round. Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about nature journaling beginners for a little bit because I think this is something that a lot of people who watch the videos online and come to nature journaling classes in person and come to the conference, a lot of people are beginners. So, what is your number one tip for people who are just getting started with nature journaling?
When you're getting started and you feel like this mental block of where to start, if that happens, think back to something that you've gotten really good at and when you were new at that, and try to check in with yourself regarding, do I like this and why am I doing it? And if
Mm,
you can do that and try not to have pressure about an expectation of how things should be, because we get really programmed to think about like how something should be. If you can let that go, it's hard. You have to be really you have to be mindful of that when it creeps up, like, oh no, it's supposed to look like this or it should be like that. If that happens to you, I think that happens to a lot of people. Try not to focus on that. Try just to let that go and go back into what you're trying to look at, what you're looking at, and just focus again on that. What am I seeing about this thing that's really interesting to me? What's another question? If you don't know what to do, one of the things, and my husband gave me this tip. I was focusing more and more on questions because I felt like I wasn't asking enough questions in my nature journal.
mhm,
And, questions are really different than putting down like the initial drawing, right? I think where you might get stuck is if you don't know how to draw. We all know how to move the pencil, but if you're focusing on the drawing, it really can take you away from the focus on like, why am I doing this? I'm trying to learn this thing, you know. If you start asking questions and then you ask more questions than you feel comfortable asking in that moment, like where your brain wants to stop, you're getting to the deeper questions by you have to get these initial questions out of the way first,
mhm.
and then it starts to kind of like, ow, you know, and you have to really push at that point, and that's where you have some chocolate and you've had your coffee, and then you start to say, you know what, how does that connect? If also you're kind of stuck, another good helpful tip, let me pull it out, is in the back of my nature journals.
Mhm.
Like I have a little envelope, but underneath my envelope I have like I have some the curiosity scaffolds.
Mm.
And so, because there's so many good questions, like, like, what is it like? How does it work? Why is it like this? How are the different points of view? And then Bethan Burton, she had a great blog post that came out, and it was about life, landscape, and linkages.
Hmm.
And questions like the biotic, like, is everything that is alive biotic and abiotic? What elements comprise the scene? And what are the interactions between the different parts? And the point that I'm making with this is when you start to focus instead on what are the connections that you're seeing and what's going on and how are they all related, it's easier to then get lost in your nature
Mhm.
journal page and then maybe forget about being judgmental about yourself, which could slow you
Mhm.
down and stop you potentially from doing this at all.
Mm,
So try to focus on those questions, be like a really good question generator,
mm-hmm, mm,
and that'll help you look at things. I think when you do that and then you walk away with this page full of this stuff, I think you're going to feel good about that experience. And I think that's enough to be like that dopamine hit of like, I want to do that again.
right. Yeah, those are really good tips for beginners. Cool. Um, could you tell us about your personal nature journaling practice? You told us about your sky painting practice. What about, do you have certain routines or habits or practice, or how do you think about your nature journaling practice in general?
Yeah, so I have you mentioned the skies. I have like a few other ways of approaching it. I have little backyard studies. I
Hmm.
have studies where I go out and I have sit spots. And the sit spots are based off of like the time of day and where there's shade or not shade and how hot it is. I go on a weekly really long walk slash run. And that's like, it's almost this non negotiable thing that I do. And I don't put any headphones in, I don't listen to anything. I just go out there for a while. It's usually about 5 miles. For me, that's a long walk. I know for some people, like that's like child's play. Um, I go out there and I don't have a rule when I'm doing that about what I'm going to sketch or when I'm going to sketch or nature journal. It's just there will be many moments and it's based off of how much energy I have left because of like running if I ran a lot.
Hmm.
And I stop and try to document as much as I can in that session as well. So I'll have things that are changing around my neighborhood. And then um I have another, it's a nature journal, but it's I actually I forgot when I was talking about all of my nature journaling and I had said I use everything in Hanamula. I don't. That's not true. I use regular paper for my neighborhood nature
Hmm.
inside of a sorta notebook where you can take the papers out and put more papers in. And what I do is that is like almost every day, not every single day, almost every day, I have some observation of what's going on in our neighborhood. And I make
Hmm.
notes and quick sketches about that. That's where I've tracked the migrations of the swallows for the last 3 years. I've tracked when we're seeing more herons, when the robins are here, when the
Hmm.
weather's changing, when we have massive heat waves. So those are not like I don't use any watercolor in those because the paper can't handle it. I don't use
Hmm.
any color, quite frankly, in those. But some of my richest notes, I can't believe I forgot that, are in that neighborhood nature book. And they're just what's going on and what I'm observing. And it's kind of like it's the neighborhood beat on
Hmm.
nature. Yeah. And it's like that has been, I turn to that. We'll get like when I'm wondering when are the swallows going to come back. And now I have a spreadsheet about it. Um,
Wow.
it's yeah to see like okay there's usually two clutches. This year it was three because one died off because of the heat wave.
Whoa.
All four of their chicks died.
Whoa.
We haven't had that happen, so then they laid a
Hmm.
new batch, and tracking when each egg is laid, when each egg hatches, when each hatchling fledges, when they migrated in, when their mating behaviors are, when they leave. None of
Hmm.
that had visuals except for like a
Hmm.
just quick sketch that doesn't even look like a swallow, but it has like some tails to tell me when I look at the pages that's a swallow.
Hmm.
That's the section with the swallows. I reference that to find out like, okay, I know they were here last year. Was it like March around Pi Day, around March 14th? The swallows are going
Hmm.
to be coming in. That's been so wonderful. And I noticed so much more, in our home just because of that.
Hmm. Wow, that's really cool how you have these different, um, very specific practices in different ways. I think that's a really useful personal experience for other people to think about, and maybe consider, or maybe be like, wow, that's very different from what works for me, but it's still
Mhm.
interesting to hear about. Like, so thanks for sharing that. And it's so cool how you have those different practices, and it seems like different those different practices have different benefits and everything. So thanks for sharing that. And then for our closing question here, maybe you could riff a little bit on this question, but what do you think the future of nature journaling is?
I hope it looks like it's just exploding. And I hope it continues because The more we learn to look, the more we learn to care, and we need a lot of caring. And we need to save this planet. And if you're not looking and you're not caring and you're getting lost in the wrong things, you can't help make any progress with the right things. So, I certainly felt that I cared a lot about things, and I know that every year that I nature journal, I care a lot more than the previous year. I fall in love more. I notice more. It matters to me more. I feel like you know, for me to just bawl my eyes out when we find a dead bird, and it's because
Mhm.
I've connected with this creature differently. It has a name to me now. It matters to me. I've watched it grow up, kind of,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's different. And I know it might sound silly to some, but it's just like I think that's beautiful to care and to feel like, that there are stakes in these things.
Mm.
We're so disconnected by being so very connected, and we're not connected to the
Mm.
right things.
Where's
So
that tissue? Where's that tissue paper at?
I need to paint my skies. I'm
I
sorry.
know. I think my tissue
So
paper has
hard.
wait, I think mine already has watercolor all over it. So yeah. Well, that's still pretty clean, I guess.
There you go.
Wow. Okay. Well, what a great and poignant way to wrap up this conversation. And thank you so much for teaching this year. I'm really looking forward to your class. And I think I am going to try to get some different watercolor paper. And maybe what I'll do to keep like all of my stuff from the conference together is maybe I'll cut out little small pieces of arch or like one of the other fancy watercolor paper, and then I can put that into like stick them somehow onto my other journal pages or something.
That is a,
So,
you know what? I do that sometimes, and I recommend it because here's one where
ooh, wow,
this
that
was
looks so cool.
this was when we had a 109-degree high
Wow.
Fahrenheit, and I wanted to test what it was like to paint a sky in that heat.
Yeah.
I wanted to know what it like being careful. And so I
Yeah.
had to do it very quickly. But I was able to paint that sky and then just use double-sided tape and put
Yeah.
it in there. But so that was that moment of I was observing
Wow.
the heat, and also how the wasps had this weird interaction
Mm,
during that high heat and how they were acting differently. So
wow.
yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely be at your class.
Thank
And
you.
thanks to everybody who joined the live and everybody who watches the recorded version. See you next time.
Thanks, Marla. This was
Bye.
great. Take care.
Thank you, bro.